An animal is calling, will you answer? The call didn't just come through the phone, it came through the stillness of a fog-drenched dawn, wrapped in the kind of silence that whispers something sacred is waiting. At exactly 5:23 a.m., the emergency line at Mountain Valley Animal Rescue cracked through the quiet with an urgency that didn't just ask for help, it begged for it, Dr. Catherine. Kit Morrison had barely cradled her first cup of coffee when her screen lit up with a message from Boyd Henley, a seasoned rancher whose voice, even in recording, trembled with an ache only a man of land and livestock could carry. His words were cracked, breathless. It's Diesel. He hasn't moved in almost a day, just lying there, not eating, not drinking. Something's not right, Doc. The air inside Kit's rustic kitchen turned heavy, as though it too could feel the weight of what was coming. She didn't need to ask questions, her boots hit the porch before the sun did. Tossing her medical kit into the back of her battered truck, Kit drove like the hills were bleeding. The world outside was ablaze. In autumn's fire-crimson leaves, golden fields, but none of it registered. Her thoughts were consumed by Diesel, a 2,400-pound Black Angus bull, known across Sweetwater County not just for his massive frame or flawless bloodline, but for a gentleness that defied his size. Children would climb on him. Dogs would nap by his side. This wasn't just another animal, Diesel was family. And when a soul like that falls silent, it's never just physical. Sometimes an animal's stillness is louder than a scream. Even the strongest creatures fall when something holy needs their strength. Humans are waiting. Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. The road to Henley Ranch was a winding serpent of mud and gravel, coiled through mist-covered valleys where the trees held their breath and the mountains watched in solemn stillness. The fog clung low, whispering along the ditches like something ancient was hiding in the woods. Kit gripped the wheel with fingers trained by a decade and a half of saving lives that couldn't speak for themselves. But today the silence spoke volumes. Boyd's brief call had told her only that Diesel was lying near the old oak grove, far from the barn, far from the herd. That was unusual. Bulls of Diesel's stature didn't stray from routine, and they certainly didn't stay in one spot for 18 hours unless their soul anchored them there. As Kit reached the gate, the silhouette of the great bull emerged through the veil of fog like a ghost knight guarding a battlefield. He wasn't lying like a sick animal. No collapsed limbs, no lolling head. No signs of pain. He was perched, not collapsed, as if he were on duty, watching, protecting. Boyd stood nearby, arms crossed tightly, worry etched so deep into his weathered face it looked like stone. "Doc," he said, voice taut with helplessness. "He won't let anyone near, won't eat, won't drink, but it's like he's not sick. It's like he's guarding something." Kit felt a chill not from the cold, but from the uncanny alignment of behavior that defied veterinary textbooks. This wasn't a case of physical trauma. This was instinct speaking louder than biology. When animals protect, they're not just guarding flesh. They're standing between the world and something worth saving. This isn't just a story. It's a cry from the soul of nature. Diesel's eyes met hers across the field, not with confusion, but with clarity. He wasn't seeking help. He was issuing a warning. Don't come closer unless your soul understands. Kit lowered her gear slowly, scanning every muscle of the massive beast. His posture was strategic, intentional, as if he had shaped his enormous frame into a living wall. And in the center of his curved body, something was hidden. Something precious. Every few minutes he'd dip his massive head toward the ground with a tenderness that made Kit's heart catch in her throat. This wasn't pain, this was devotion. "Has anything strange happened recently?" she asked Boyd, her voice just above the wind rustling through the frost-bitten trees. Boyd mentioned the storm-violent thunder 3 nights ago, the kind that rattles bones and frightens even the most seasoned livestock. But nothing, he said, that would justify this behavior. And yet, Kit's instinct screamed otherwise. Diesel wasn't just guarding nothing. She could feel it in her marrow. The storm may have torn down trees and fences, but it had brought something with it, something fragile, something worth sacrificing for. Slowly, Kit approached her, body language neutral, her presence non-threatening. Diesel didn't move, but his eyes followed her like a gatekeeper measuring worth. "Easy, big guy," she whispered, her voice wrapped in reverence. "I'm not your enemy. I just want to see who or what you're protecting." Sometimes the wild places choose who gets to witness their miracles. He wasn't guarding territory. He was guarding grace. The closer Kit came, the more the air seemed to vibrate with something unseen, like standing beside a heartbeat that didn't belong to just one creature, but to the land itself. She dropped to her knees about 20 feet away, keeping herself low, non-threatening. Immediately, Diesel's body relaxed, but only slightly. His eyes stayed locked. Behind him, she finally caught a glimpse beneath the great arc of his belly and legs. Something small, something breathing. Her pulse surged. "Boyd," she called softly, "do you have binoculars?" Boyd rushed to his truck, boots crunching frost with every hurried step. When he returned and handed her the lenses, Kit adjusted them with trembling fingers and peered beneath the massive guardian. What she saw nearly undid her. Curled in the dry patch of grass protected beneath Diesel's massive torso was a baby mountain lion cub, no bigger than a house cat, shivering but alive. Kit's breath caught in her chest. What on earth? The bull had not only sheltered it from the storm, but kept it warm, safe, untouched for nearly 24 hours. It was behavior so out of sync with nature's rules that it felt like a divine contradiction. The predator sheltered by the prey, the giant protecting the fragile. Diesel, the gentle giant of Sweetwater, had made a decision that defied instincts. Written by generations of survival, he had chosen mercy, chosen love, and in doing so, reminded the humans watching that sometimes animals become the best of us. When the strong kneel to shelter the weak, creation speaks in whispers only the heart can hear. He was more than a protector, he was a parent the wild never promised. But he chose it anyway. Diesel stood like a statue carved from purpose and instinct, but when Kit looked again, truly looked, it was no longer just awe she felt, it was reverence. This wasn't a case of territorial aggression, nor the disoriented confusion of a sick or aging animal. No, this was a deliberate act of devotion, far deeper than anything Kit had ever encountered in her long veterinary career. Diesel had made a decision, a conscious one. He had placed his massive, muscle-bound frame between the world and something. Fragile not out of survival, but out of compassion. He wasn't just guarding this small creature. He was raising it. Somewhere, buried deep in the biological wiring of a creature not known for nurturing, a switch had flipped, and what emerged was an act of emotional courage more profound than any textbook could ever explain. Kit, who had always believed in the intelligence of animals, now found herself rethinking the depth of that intelligence. Not logical, not instinctual, but spiritual. Scale-level awareness. When Boyd returned with his old pair of binoculars scratched, worn, and smelling faintly of hay, Kit took them with trembling fingers and steadied her breath. Her heart pounded as she raised the lenses and adjusted the focus toward the curled space beneath Diesel's belly. And then she saw it, not a calf, not a wild fawn, but a puppy. A tiny golden retriever puppy, no more than 8 weeks old. It lay, nestled in a bed of dry grass, shielded perfectly from the damp cold. Its fur was warm, dry, clean, no signs of suffering, no shivers, just deep, innocent sleep. The kind of peace that only comes when a soul knows it's safe? Kit gasped. So sharply, she nearly dropped the binoculars. It wasn't just shocking, it was holy. The storm 3 nights ago must have separated this little one from its mother. And somehow, against all odds, a 2,400-pound bull had found it. And made a choice that would change the way we understand animal empathy forever. When nature breaks its own rules to protect the smallest among us, that's not instinct. That's grace. It takes strength to protect. But it takes love to nurture. "Boy, you absolutely need to see this," Kit whispered, her voice trembling with emotion as she passed Boyd the binoculars. He peered through, squinting at first hand. Then his face transformed. One by one, emotions bloomed like morning sun across his weathered features. Confusion, disbelief, awe, and finally, something deeper, a reverent silence. "I'll be completely damned," he murmured. "He's not sick, he's a dad." The words cracked in his throat, rough with wonder. How? How does that even happen? Boyd had seen plenty of things in 40 years of ranching. Tornadoes, triplet births, wild animal standoffs. But nothing like this. A bull taking a puppy under his wing as if it were his own calf? Nature didn't write stories like this. But sometimes the heart rewrites the rules. Kits. Mind raced through every scientific angle. Maybe the puppy had been born on a neighboring property, lost in the chaos of the storm. Maybe it wandered for miles before collapsing in Diesel's field. Or maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was what happened after. Diesel had chosen to act. He hadn't nudged the puppy away. He hadn't walked off. He had planted himself between it and the cold, the predators. The storeman had not moved for nearly 24 hours. That wasn't instinct. That was love. The puppy stirred now, a soft whimper escaping its throat, and before either human could react, Diesel responded. He lowered his immense head with such gentleness it felt like watching a god lower his crown. A soft rumble rose from deep within his chest, a lullaby only animals can sing. The puppy stopped whimpering. It leaned against Diesel's leg like a child resting against a parent's lap. Kit felt her throat tighten. "This," she whispered, "is not just behavior. This is relationship. When the wild chooses love over fear." Even heaven leans in to listen. She had to earn his trust not as a vet, but as a witness to a miracle. Now came the real challenge. Diesel wasn't just a caretaker, he had become a parent. And parents don't take lightly to strangers near their young. Kit knew that. Every move she made now would either open a door or close it forever. So she did what few in her profession would have the patience for. She sat. Right there in the dewy pasture, she folded her legs and settled onto the damp ground, placing herself just far enough to not be seen as a threat, but close enough to let Diesel see her heart. Her voice became the tool. She spoke softly, not in commands, but in conversation. "Hey, big guy, I see you. You're doing something no one expected. Something beautiful." Diesel didn't flinch. He listened. She turned toward the puppy, her tone now maternal, coaxing, kind. "Hello, little one. You're safe, aren't you?" He's watching over you like an angel. Hours passed. Boyd had returned to the ranch house, gathering supplies. Kit had specifically requested puppy food, fresh water, soft blankets. When he came back, she guided him slowly, deliberately, placing the items a few feet outside Diesel's protective perimeter. "We're not here to take anything from him," she explained. "We're here to give. If we want his trust, we have to earn it the way he did from the ground up." It was a delicate dance offering without asking, helping without touching. As the scent of warm puppy food wafted across the field, the puppy stirred again, sniffing. The air, its belly growled, and it whimpered in hunger. Now the moment of truth arrived. Diesel had to decide, keep guarding, or let someone else provide. Kit watched the gears turn in his mind like cogs shaped from compassion. He looked at the food, then at the puppy, then at Kit. The weight of trust hung thick in the air. Would he allow a stranger to help? Would he risk the safety of his adopted child? Every instinct said no. But love said yes. The heart of the strong is not measured by how it defends, but by how it lets others love what it protects. The protector opened the gate, not just to food, but to trust. It was a moment that didn't just shift the course of the rescue, it reshaped the very language of interspecies love. As the puppy whimpered with hunger, Diesel still guarding. Like a living fortress, made a decision that no textbook could explain. Slowly, deliberately, the massive bull stepped backward. His hooves moved with such careful control it was as if he'd rehearsed this choreography in his dreams. He didn't leave the puppy unguarded? No, he restructured his protection. He realigned his legs and body to form a narrow pathway between himself and the food bowls. A corridor that allowed the puppy to reach nourishment while still remaining cocooned beneath Diesel's vigilant gaze. It was a living embodiment of sacrifice and strategy, a warrior making way for a child to grow. The golden retriever, weak and unsteady, sensed the change. Hunger overruled hesitation, and with that signature clumsy gait of very young dogs, the pup scuttled toward the food. It made soft, wet snuffling sounds as it devoured each bite, the sounds echoing in the hushed pasture like a hymn of survival. Kit couldn't hold back her praise. "Good boy, Diesel," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "You're such an incredible protector. You're smart enough to let him eat, but still guarding him with everything you have." Diesel didn't acknowledge the compliment, but he didn't have to. His head continued to swivel between the pup and the humans like a rotating lighthouse of defense. Then came a moment Kit would replay in her memory for the rest of her life. The puppy, now full, returned to Diesel, not with fear or uncertainty, but with affection. It began to play. It nipped at Diesel's fetlocks. It ducked under his belly and wagged its tail. Dancing in circles, Diesel stood perfectly still, not flinching, not twitching, adjusting his stance only when necessary to ensure the puppy remained unharmed. Here was a creature that could flatten an ATV with one kick, choosing instead to freeze in place so he wouldn't so much as bump the fragile body weaving beneath him. Boyd whispered, reverent. "Kit, look at that. He's not just protecting that pup, he's conscious of it. He knows how tiny it is. He knows he could hurt it. And he won't." Kit nodded, awed. "He's reprogrammed himself. Bulls are built for dominance, territory, strength. But Diesel, he's flipped the script, his instincts, completely rerouted toward caregiving. That's not just unusual, it's revolutionary. When the strong choose gentleness, the whole world pauses to learn what love looks like. Love writes its own language even in silence." The golden light of the afternoon sun bathed the pasture in warmth as Kit continued her slow, deliberate approach. She had been observing for hours, learning the boundaries Diesel had set, both physical and emotional. She noticed a pattern. When she spoke directly to the puppy in affectionate, maternal tones, Diesel's shoulders relaxed. His ears flicked, not in warning but in recognition. The puppy trusted Kitten. Diesel was watching that trust like a ledger. Slowly, the invisible line surrounding them began to blur. At last, Kit reached the edge of Diesel's sanctuary. The bull's body tensed, his eyes locked on her every movement. She knew this was it, the line between fear and faith. Her voice didn't waver. "I just want to check on your baby, Diesel," she murmured, crouching low to show submission. "You've done such an incredible job. I just want to help him stay strong." There was no sound in the field but the wind and the breath of giants. Diesel's muscles rippled beneath his hide, prepared for any danger, but he didn't move forward. He didn't warn her away. Slowly, he allowed her in. Kit crawled to the pup and gently began a visual check. No broken bones, no visible injuries. She ran her fingers through its fur. The pup nuzzled her hand. Above them, Diesel stood like a sentry made of muscle and moonlight. And then the question came, one that split logic and heart in two. Should they stay together? Boyd's voice held the weight of generations. "Kit, I can't have a bull distracted by a dog when it's time to breed. What happens if we need to work with Diesel? That little pup could get trampled." Kit understood, rationally but emotionally, spiritually. She pointed at the scene before them, the puppy curled between Diesel's hooves, snoring gently. Diesel not moving an inch. "This isn't distraction," she said. "This is devotion. Some souls are not bound by species. They are bound by purpose." The solution came from the smallest heart with the clearest vision. Just when the conversation reached an impasse, salvation arrived, not on four hooves or in a pickup truck, but on a school bus. Boyd's 12-year-old granddaughter Lily had just come home and heard about Diesel and the pup. She didn't hesitate. "Why not just build them their own space?" she asked with innocent brilliance. Boyd started to brush it off, but Kit's eyes lit up. "Lily, that's genius." By sunset, the plan was set. They would build an enclosure, a peaceful sanctuary just beside the barn. Spacious, secure, weatherproof, and full of soft bedding and safe feeders. Diesel would have the room he needed, and Buddy, the name Lily gave the puppy, would have constant companionship and protection. The goal wasn't to contain them, but to honor their bond with safety and dignity. Convincing Diesel to move wasn't easy. Kit spent the entire next day using gentle cues, calming words, and the puppy's presence to guide them into their new home. At first, Diesel resisted. But when Buddy bounded into the enclosure, tail wagging and yipping with excitement, Diesel followed like a shadow made of loyalty. Within days, they'd formed a new rhythm. Diesel grazed lazily while Buddy chased butterflies. They napped together, side by side, the bull's flank acting as a living pillow. Boyd, watching from the fence, shook his head in wonder. That little dog gave Diesel something I never could purpose. The miracle wasn't that they met. The miracle was that they chose to stay. When animals choose love, the world must choose to listen. Kit documented everything: photos, videos, notes, behavioral shifts. She knew the story wasn't just heartwarming, it was historic. It challenged everything science had assumed about livestock emotional capacity. Diesel hadn't just adapted to the puppy, he had integrated it into his daily life. He ate slower, he laid down more gently. He vocalized in low, soothing tones never before observed in bulls. And he never not once allowed anything or anyone to threaten Buddy. Visitors came, ranchers from counties over, families from the city. Everyone wanted to see the gentle giant and his tiny companion, and all left changed. I used to think animals just existed, one old cowboy said. Now I think they feel more than we do. Kit's reports became articles, then seminars, then international papers. The videos went viral, set to soft music with captions like "What love looks like with no words." People cried, people shared, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Diesel and Buddy just kept doing what they did best: loving, quietly, fiercely, in a world of fences, too. Souls tore down the walls between species and reminded us, love is the only language that needs no translation. They didn't just survive together, they became together. A year had passed since the storm that changed everything. And in that year, the bond between Diesel, the 2,400-pound Black Angus, Boo, and Buddy, the once lost golden furred puppy, had evolved from an accidental rescue into something so synchronized, so spiritually aligned that even seasoned veterinarians struggled to explain it. What began as protection had matured into partnership. What started with shelter had transformed into shared life. By now, Buddy was a 6-month-old golden retriever, no longer the trembling ball of fluff Diesel had once shielded from wind and rain, but a healthy, vibrant, emotionally intelligent dog with eyes full of wisdom and a gait full of purpose. And, Diesel, still massive, still majestic, had changed too. He walked slower now, more calculated. His hooves, once indifferent to what lay beneath, now stepped as though the earth itself was fragile. He had learned to position himself as a living wall against storms, facing the brunt of wind so Buddy could curl behind his flank in safety. He had learned to call not with a bellow but a low musical vibration, a rumble that had become their language. When Buddy wandered too far from the enclosure, that sound would ripple through the pasture, and the golden dog would come sprinting back, not because he was commanded, but because he was called by love. Visitors often stared in quiet disbelief at the way the two communicated. It wasn't just companionship, it was a dialogue. Kit, now deeply invested in their care, once said during a seminar, "Diesel and Buddy aren't just coexisting, they're cooperating. They're co-raising each other." Veterinary students gathered from across the state to observe the pair, their clipboards forgotten in laps as they watched the bull and the dog anticipate each other's movements, moods, and needs with a fluidity that felt almost supernatural. When souls are aligned in truth, they create a rhythm the world can only witness, not explain. Love didn't make them weak, it made them wiser. The health benefits of their bond extended beyond the emotional. Diesel's stress levels, once fluctuating due to seasonal breeding cycles and routine vet procedures, had stabilized. His heart rate remained consistently low, his behavior more predictable, his temperament surprisingly serene. He became easier to handle during checkups and vaccinations, no longer requiring sedation or restraint. Even Boyd, who once feared the practical implications of housing a bull and a dog together, began to see the bigger picture. Diesel's actually more valuable now, he confessed to Kit one crisp morning while leaning on the pasture gate. Other ranchers asked to breed with him not just because of his genetics, but because they've seen videos of how calm he is around Buddy. They think his temperament can be passed down. Maybe they're right. As for Buddy, he had become the heart of the ranch. A dog that knew exactly when to bark and when to sit. He never startled livestock. He herded chickens with the grace of a seasoned sheepdog and protected the perimeter, like a sentinel. But more than that, he became Diesel's translator. When visitors approached too fast, Buddy would bark not aggressively, but in warning, giving Diesel a heads up. When Diesel rested, Buddy curled against his side, not for comfort but to give comfort. No one taught them this. It was learned, shared, offered. Dr. Amanda Chun, a prominent animal cognition researcher, heard of their story and came to observe. What she found would later be published in 3 scientific journals and discussed at 2 international conferences. Diesel displays emotional regulation and cognitive adaptability that challenges everything we assumed about livestock intelligence, she said. What we're witnessing is not only interspecies empathy but long-term emotional investment. This isn't instinct. This is intentional love. Wisdom isn't always taught. Sometimes it is chosen, lived, and passed silently from one creature to another. 1 year later, the miracle still breathed. It was a warm autumn afternoon, almost identical to the one when the emergency call had first brought Kit to the Henley Ranch. The leaves burned crimson across the ridgelines, and the wind whispered through the oak grove like the voice of memory. Kit stood beside the pasture fence with her tablet in hand, preparing for a routine check on Diesel's vitals. But what happened next wasn't routine, it was sacred. As she approached, Buddy padded across the grass, no longer the puppy she remembered, but still holding that spark of innocence that had first melted Diesel's heart. He stopped in front of the bull, lifted his muzzle, and gently pressed his nose to Diesel's massive jaw. Diesel responded not with a snort, not with a bellow, but with the same soft, melodic rumble Kit had heard that first day 1 year ago. It was a sound that could never be measured by decibels or frequency. It had to be felt. It wrapped around you like a blessing, like the voice of an old tree speaking to the wind. Kit froze, blinking back tears. She knew in that moment that this pair had done more than survive. They had redefined the meaning of family, not by blood, not by species, but by soul. Boyd joined her, arms folded across his chest, a smirk hidden behind his mustache. Some folks still think it was all luck, he muttered. Just a freak accident that the pup ended up here, and Diesel took a liking to him. But I don't believe in accidents anymore. That little dog needed someone to protect him, and that big bull. He needed something to protect. They were both lost in different ways, and they healed each other. Kit didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because in front of them, as the golden sun painted 2 shadows across the pasture, one massive, one small, they saw what so many people go their entire lives searching for: purpose through love. Families are not built by blood. They are revealed in moments when love becomes action and protection becomes presence. As the camera pans across the sunset-drenched pasture, Diesel rests beneath the oak tree, eyes half closed, breathing slow and steady. Beside him, Buddy is curled like a golden flame against his side, tail flicking in contentment. The world may forget headlines, but it will never forget a story like this. Because Diesel and Buddy didn't just survive the storm, they became the calm after it. So we ask you, what would change if we treated every creature not as an animal, but as a soul looking to connect? And what kind of love would we find if we just stayed still long enough to listen? The storm brought them together, but it was love that made them stay.